Hello and welcome to another episode of Double J's List. First and foremost, let's take care of some business. I want to ask you to like and subscribe to the channel. Like and subscribe and I can start doing some really fun things with you folks. But anyway, let's move on. I want to talk about performance dad cars. I'm a dad. I've got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And the world seems to have filled up with crossovers and SUVs. When I was a kid, going back to the late 80s, early 90s, the cool thing was for dads to have some sort of a fast sedan. We'll call it a dad sedan. I remember my dad coveting the first and second generations of Ford Taurus SHO that ran from 1989 to 1995. Those had a Yamaha 3-liter V6, available manual transmission. They were fairly light. They handled pretty well. They were actually a fantastic car. There were some other really neat cars of that era too. One that pops to mind is the Nissan Maxima. Had a nice 3-liter V6, available manual transmission. They used to market it as the 4-door sports car. Today, we're seeing fewer and fewer sporty sedans and hatchbacks. Unfortunately, however you want to look at it, the market is now getting taken over by SUVs and crossovers. Look at my fleet. Anyway, this leaves very few choices for those of us. However, there are some very good choices. The number one, in my opinion, best choice for dad sedan in our modern era, without a doubt, is the Chevy SS from 2014. I think it was 2017 or 2018 they ran. But what's most important is from 2015 on, they had an available manual transmission, and they all came standard with magnetic ride, which is General Motors' system to adjust the shock absorbers on a car to do things that really no other suspension system on the market can do. You can make it ride really well. You can make it handle really well. It reacts to the conditions. It's so good that they sell off their technology to other auto manufacturers. Therefore, when you get it on a General Motors vehicle, you probably get the best version of it because they're the ones who own the technology. But anyway, the Chevy SS, 415 horsepower, front engine, rear drive. It's on a platform developed by the Australian division of General Motors, Holden, which I think just became defunct, unfortunately. They made this car to be fantastic. 0 to 60 in the 4-second range. Plenty of room in the back seat to put kids' seats, big trunk. And with that magnetic suspension, it handled amazingly well. It's an unsung hero. It's a little bit boring on the outside, but that's okay. You don't want to bring attention to yourself as a dad driving around with your kids. It's perfect. So, problem with that car is that it costs a lot of money and they hold their value really, really well. Trying to find a manual transmission Chevy SS in really nice condition for under $40,000 is pretty tough. And personally, I'm not comfortable with spending that kind of money on a car for myself. However, I will say if this YouTube channel takes off to the point where I could afford one, I'll do it for you guys. Like and subscribe. Come on, do it. Anyway. So there's got to be some alternatives, and that's what I really want to talk about, or dad car alternatives to the Chevy SS, only because it's so darn expensive. One thing I will say before I get into that is, even though that Chevy SS is so expensive, it's going to hold its value really, really well. It already has. They were $50,000 new, but they had a bunch of rebates because they didn't sell initially. So you could buy one for close to $40,000 when it was brand new, and they seem to be sticking to that used, even with 30,000, 40,000 miles on them. The car that preceded it, also based on that same Holden platform, was the Pontiac G8. The GXP variant was almost the same engine and drivetrain, but they hold their value extraordinarily well. Those are tough to get for less than $30,000, and they're over 10 years old now. So one could make the argument, yes, that a Chevy SS is really expensive, but at the same time, when you go to sell it, you're going to get most of your money back. So I will say that, but I'm still not comfortable with making that big car payment. So what are some less expensive alternatives? The first one that comes to mind is the latest version of the Ford Taurus SHO. Now, it's not as good as that original version from 1989 to 1995 that had the Yamaha V6. It's a lot bigger, a lot heavier, but it is a lot more powerful. It doesn't handle as good, and for being a big car, it doesn't have a lot of room inside. I don't know how Ford did that, but that's what they did. It's kind of small. And you could do it as a family, but you expect a car that big to have a ton of room, and it doesn't have a ton of room. It's just okay. I think it's 365 horsepower with a turbocharged V6, all-wheel drive. You can use that in the winter, which is really appealing. And they don't hold their value very well, as opposed to the Chevy SS. Those were like $40,000 and $50,000 new, and they seem to be on the used market for really, really nice ones in the $20,000 range. So that's significantly less than a Chevy SS, like half the price for a car that's almost as fast. One disadvantage also is you can't get it with a manual transmission, where the Chevy you can. That's a big deal to me. Another choice from that era would be a Cadillac CTS-V from the mid-2010s. They had actually even more power. They had the engine from the Z06 Corvette, supercharged V8, and they were available in a sedan, wagon, or coupe. Unfortunately, the wagons get a giant premium. I can't even justify that. They're absolutely insane. But the sedans and the coupes are a whole lot cheaper. Also available with a manual transmission, and even more powerful, and basically the same platform that the Chevy SS was on. They're around the same price. You actually get a little bit more car. It's not that simple, awesome package that the Chevy SS is, and 415 horsepower is, quite frankly, more than enough for me. Another choice, we're going to have to move down market pretty quickly here, would be a Mazda 6. What I like about the Mazda 6 is, in my opinion, it's one of the nicest looking designs of a car out there. And up until like 2 years ago, you could get them with manual transmissions. Disadvantages, it's front wheel drive, so it's not as good for the driving enthusiast. Still pretty good though. It's not really powerful. It only has like 175 horsepower or something like that. But spacious. It's still dynamically very good handling. It just doesn't have that front engine rear drive feel that a true driving enthusiast really is looking for. Another choice that falls under that same idea, the Honda Accord Sport of the previous generation. I'm not a big fan of the turbo one that's out right now, but the previous generation was the old K-Series 4-cylinders, a 2.4 liter with a manual transmission available, and that's the one you should get, in my opinion. So I think the other choice would be a CVT, which is, don't do that at all. Some of the disadvantages to that, it's still down on power. It's not quite as good as the other choices, but it's a whole heck of a lot cheaper. And it gets great fuel economy. It's a Honda. It's going to be really reliable. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah, but here's the problem. I'm getting bored talking about it. That's the problem with that car. So let's move on. The next choice that I would throw out there is actually, it's almost too cliche, but I'm going to bring it up. The Subaru WRX and WRX STI. They're considerably smaller than the other cars that I'm talking about. However, Subaru is very good at using their space. They have really large back seat, really large trunk for a small car. They incorporate all-wheel drive. They are made for driving enthusiasm. They have manuals available at the STI. The only way you can get it is with a manual. Personally, I lean towards the WRX only because I don't need a lot of the track-specific things that the STI has. I don't need the differential that you can adjust or the big Brembo brakes. For the type of driving that I do, I don't really do track work. So I think a regular WRX would be a lot better for me. It'd save the money and have way better fuel economy. Completely different engines between the two cars. But Again, really good for parenting. But moving on, I can't really think off the top of my head of other cars have sparked my interest much, as far as being a really good dad sedan. I also want to throw in that I don't want to come across as sexist saying that these are dad sedans. You can be a mom and really want a good driving car too. So, anyway, again, please like and subscribe. Let's get some more people watching, and I'll start doing some really fun things if you get in on it. Thank you.